Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Rhyme of the Times for the week ending 17th of May 2025. Trump shakes hands with a one-time pariah, and Syrians are inspired, but he finally tires of Putin the liar and his refusal to agree to the ceasefire that Ukraine desires. Gaza's situation becomes more dire, causing Western ire. The star of Farage, the one-time political outlier, rises higher, and chaos in UK politics transpires. Another UK song is condemned to the Eurovision pyre. Another week dominated by the mood swings of Trump, from wild optimist to curmudgeonly grump. On Sunday he tried to bang heads together, told Ukraine and Russia their war can't last forever, said he was getting fed up and had itchy feet and would walk away if the two sides didn't meet. So a meeting was agreed Friday in Istanbul, delegations from each side of around a handful. Zelensky immediately said he'd be there, but unsurprisingly the Kremlin cowards seemed scared. He sent in his place a delegation of gangsters, a bunch of Kremlin's political pranksters, and most observers immediately surmised that Putin's peace overtures were a thin disguise, being used to keep the wool over Trump's eyes that are blinded by thoughts of a Nobel Peace Prize. So those talks went ahead on Friday without Zelensky and Putin and achieved just about naught. Just a prisoner swap, almost nothing more, because Ukraine desires peace while Russia wants war. When asked, Trump said the talks didn't succeed cause without me there nothing can be agreed. Trump himself was on a Middle East safari, visiting the UAE, the Saudis and Qataris. It was more about business than achieving peace, and Israel's bombardment of Gaza didn't cease. A policy that's giving Western leaders the hump, and on this trip Netanyahu was shunned by Trump. Not only was Israel left off his itinerary, he went out of his way to embrace a sworn enemy. In a moment in Riyadh, unexpected and bizarre, Trump shook the hand of Ahmed al-Sharaa, a guy who's gone from having a bounty on his head for the acts of the terrorist group he once led, to 6 months later being the head of Syria, after ousting Bashar al-Assad late last year. The terror outfit he led is called HTS, which is still banned by the UN, UK and US. But al-Sharaa severed ties 9 years ago, chose a political path as the one to follow. And so Trump and al-Sharaa on Wednesday shook hands, and Trump lifted Syria's sanctions. How he loves to grandstand. Could this be the start of Middle East shifting sands? It's not really that simple, but does Trump understand? Reform UK have their feet under the table, out to make their mark and make things unstable. The results of Mayday's local elections caused Maydays to be sent out in all directions by politicians of all stripes other than Reform, realising they're in the midst of a storm. The first 10 councils ever in the UK now have Reform UK holding sway. A tipping point seems to have come to pass. Farage has the big boys falling flat on their arse. Conservatives have been completely run over, voters leaving and needing to be won over. For the two main parties it has become telling this story they've been telling is no longer compelling. For an electorate whose discontent was swelling, their frustration right now has no repelling. The question is, have we gone past the stage of reform just being a conduit for rage? Certainly it seems to have rattled the Tory cage, Kemi Badenoch at last willing to engage in an existential fight that Tories must wage to avoid being consigned to a history book page. Meanwhile, Starmer's tying himself in knots, getting his government in several tight spots. And when it comes to Starmer's spots, he ain't no leopard, with as much direction as a sheep with no shepherd. With some tabloids, a new moniker's been forged, Starmer Chameleon, to misrender Boy George. On Monday it sounded strange and for some outrageous, hearing Sir Keir refer to an island of strangers. To many it was his rivers of blood moment and was seized upon by all his opponents. Talking about immigration, he was giving it large. Many thought they were listening to Nigel Farage. On Thursday he had many Brexiteers upset when he announced he'd agreed a Brexit reset. With the levers of power he's angered many leavers who feel that the Prime Minister has deceived us. Especially fishy is the clause that dictates the EU can fish our waters till 2038. Starmer said it's win-win, but Reform are aggrieved. The idea of undoing Brexit has many quite peeved. But with Trump and Putin now thick as thieves, closer ties with Europe have many other Brits relieved. On Saturday in Basel, the final decision was that JJ of Austria had won Eurovision. It was a familiar tale for the British entry. We still haven't won since the end of last century. The popular vote proved unpopular for us. No points for our song with no hook or chorus. No hook, but we'd been fooled, hook, line and sinker, that Europeans wouldn't think our song was a stinker. One more Brit ditty to Europe's dustbin consigned for our first girl group entry with hopes unconfined. But remember Monday seemed forgotten by the time voting went live on the telephone lines. 88 points from the juries seemed unduly kind, but nul point from the public had that all undermined. What the hell just happened? The phrase that comes to mind.